Hi, friends. Welcome to Lotus in the Light. My name is Jennifer, and today we are going to talk about releasing some heavier, if you're ready, releasing some heavier ideas around spiritual law and leaning a little bit more into what Jesus came and demonstrated with his life, which is this enlightened understanding that leads to the fulfillment of the law, therefore releasing the chains that those laws put us into. And so we're going to talk about the transformation, the journey from law, the enforcement of spiritual laws as a means to righteousness, to the integration of love as um, as that path to freedom. So again, the law being something that we have to enforce. That's the lower vibrational, heavier truth. It's a truth. It is a truth. But there's another truth. There's many other truths in between there and ultimate divine truth and ultimate enlightenment, right? And so what does that journey look like for us? It's all throughout the scriptures. It's very clear. It's external versus internal. It's binding and limiting and controlling versus freedom. It's fear versus truth and peace. It's moral righteousness. And if you see me looking down, it's because prior to recording this, Spirit prompted me to write them all down, to like log them, to talk about what we get from one place to another. And it's from one that journey from one to the other is about spiritual enlightenment. It's about moving from the milk to the solid foods. It's moving from spiritual infancy to full spiritual maturity. And that's what this life is all about, right? That's what we're here for. And part of that, though, is moving from, because I know years ago, I came to the realization that the moral laws they weren't about rules of engagement. They were about relationship. So there was a nice little paradigm shift for me that helped me get on that next spiritual journey when I was able to stop thinking about rules as these hard rules and started thinking about them as what the implications of those rules were for the relationships in my life and relationship with the Lord, the relationship with those around me. And now this last year, it is even busted even further open, realizing that it's also about my relationship with myself, because I am you, you are me, we are all consciousnesses, individual, unique consciousnesses of God. We are all one. Um, so we're going to look at some scriptures here, but I want to start by framing this up in a way, because let me actually start by talking about what Jesus says in Matthew in the Sermon on the Mount, where he talks about what does he talk about? Sorry, I'm having a blank moment. Oh, sorry. He talks about, like, I had to get there. Sorry, folks. He talks about the fulfillment of the law. He says, I didn't come to abolish the law. I came to fulfill it. And that's where I really had a hard time. I had a hard time grasping that. Like, what does that mean? Fulfill it. Like, this sounds like some very ethereal, spiritual, like something I'm trying to understand, but I can't really touch it. I can't really reach it. Right. And I want to bring that down. I want to ground that. I want to bring that down and allow us to be able to sit in it in our humanness and figure out how to bring that into our living truth. Right. And so, um, especially in this case where Jesus says, I didn't come to abolish the law, I came to fulfill it. And then he goes on to kind of change the rules, it feels like, right? He says, hey, murder is just as bad as being angry with your brother. What? And we go on to learn that it doesn't matter if you're not circumcised. It doesn't matter uh, if you're eating pork, like all these rules that they were living by to remain pure, to remain righteous, were being just thrown out the window. So what do you mean you're not abolishing the law? It sounds like you are. And if you're not, what does this fulfillment idea really mean? And what that really embodies, and the reason why I really struggled with it, even after I came to the conclusion that it wasn't really about rules, it was about relationship. The problem for me is that I was still clinging to this idea that I was being judged for my moral actions, or being judged for my actions based on some moral scale, right? But over and over and over in scripture, we are taught not to judge. But we still have this belief that we are being judged, and being judged by God in the end, right? We are the judge of ourselves. And that's why we're told not to judge, because we judge incorrectly, especially in this human experience where our conscious mind is determining what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong, what's positive, what's negative, but we don't really have the full picture. And so I want to put some context around that in our living circumstances. And I want you to see kind of how we need to think about these rules that we've been given. So think about a kindergartner or a group of kindergartners who are in a classroom. And when they get released from class to go to lunch or to go to another class or after school, what do? They get in a uniform single file line, and they walk together. in a nice orderly fashion to the next class or to the next thing, right? Why do we do that? We do that to protect them because they're young, because they don't yet know um, how to keep themselves safe, keep others safe in that hallway. Somebody could run off and get lost. Somebody could run off and get hurt. All kinds of crazy things can happen, right? So it's a way to protect the children who don't know any better. And that is what spiritual law is. It's a way to protect us when we don't yet know any better, or I would say we don't yet remember, because we know deep down inside, we know. Um, and that's where even Jesus says that. Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's in here. And we think about the kingdom of heaven as being this place that we go to after this life. It is not. The kingdom of heaven is here now. It's here and it's now. Um, and the sooner we figure that out, the better off we are, because we are living in hell until we figure it out. And actually, I'm gonna give you a perfect example of that. But first, let me close up the analogy here about the kindergartners. Now, take a class of seniors in high school. When they are going from class to class or leaving school for the day, do they get in that same single form line? No, because they have, not because they're not required to follow the same rules. It's because they have integrated the rule. They understand how to function out in that common space without hurting themselves and hurting each other. That's what it's all about. In fact, Paul tells us in is it in Galatians? No, it's in Romans. Paul tells us in Romans that or wherever it is, that the all of the commandments can be summed up in this: to love your neighbor as yourself. And he says, and with that, the law is fulfilled. And that's it, to love your neighbor as yourself. But listen to this: you have to love yourself first before you can love your neighbor the way they need to be loved. We're all one, and it starts here. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself. That's God, your neighbor, you. Okay. And when Jesus has a conversation with a spiritual teacher about that very text, or about what are the most important commandments, and Jesus says those two things, and the teacher says, you're right, because God is one. You, your neighbor, and God are one. We have forgotten our divine nature. Spirits hit me up right now with that. So I think I need to say that again. We have forgotten our divine nature. In fact, I won't even say we've forgotten it. We have crucified it. So this very topic is the reason Jesus came to this earth, to demonstrate for us Christ consciousness in human form. That's what his journey here was really about. Most of us think it was really about the crucifixion. It was not. It was about the journey to enlightenment, the journey to direct connection with God, the journey to oneness, the journey to remembering how to live and not be put into judgment and death. That's what he was here trying to teach us. The crucifixion was just another demonstration, another lesson that he was trying to show us, that daily we crucify ourselves. We crucify the idea that we are divine, and we believe something less than that. And what Jesus was saying with that resurrection is that you will remember again. You will remember. You will wake back up. You will come back to life. Okay. Does it also mean that there's life beyond this life? Yes. That's what I'm saying, that the living word and Jesus's life are living, right? The meaning becomes deeper. It takes more shape. It becomes bigger and more encompassing as we grow spiritually. So, did I show this that I wrote this morning? I think I already showed you this. So Spirit had me kind of journal, not journal, but write down here, like all the ways that we go. We move from the enforcement of law to the integration of truth and enlightenment. We move from rules of engagement to relationship. I don't need rules on how to, well, I say that, but sometimes we need rules on how to properly engage with other people, right? But eventually we don't. It's like the speed limits, right? Like, there are some of us that are very frustrated that we have to follow speed limits because we know how to drive safely. You don't have to tell me not to drive reckless, okay? But there's others that don't. And if you don't put the speed limit sign out, they're going to be driving like they own the road, right? And they're going to put some people in danger. Unfortunately, those are two different vibrational levels, two different vibrational frequencies. One that recognizes and values that we do not want to do harm to ourselves and others, and another that recognizes that to a lesser degree, and everything in between. It's not one or the other, right? Yes, it's all of it, okay? But we all are sharing the same space. And so we put laws into place that for some feel very restrictive, and for others are just what they need. And we find that within the jobs that we work, we find that all throughout our life, within the partners that we choose. Some feel more restrictive and therefore are not right for us, or not a vibrational match for us, and others feel like freedom, right? And it's different for everyone. And so we need to respect that journey for each other. I had an experience 2 days ago. I had planned to go look at 4 open houses on Sunday as my husband and I are exploring new homes. These homes are above and beyond what my current paycheck would say I could afford, or what my current bank account says I should be spending. But I'm trusting and believing that I have set the intentions. I understand that I am worthy of whatever brings me joy. And there are some certain standards that we want to get back to in our next home that would really bring us joy. And so I'm out there looking, I have these open houses planned that I think are homes that are really going to meet that. And I'm just going out to check them out, trusting that if and when we find the right home, all the rest of it's going to align. I don't have to figure out the how. That's not my job. That's Spirit's job. So I head to the first open house, get there, and realize that I got there when it ended. I thought I was getting there when it started. I got there when it ended. So I missed it. I didn't get to go in. I head to the second open house, really excited about that one because it's in a neighborhood I really love. And I get there at the right time, but no open house. Apparently it was canceled. So I was like, what's happening? I started getting into my head, and I started replaying some old narratives that my conscious mind likes to play, that when things aren't going my way, it's because I've done something wrong. I should have done something different. Maybe I'm being punished. I don't even know, right? Like all these things that I start to question myself and tell myself started to creep in. And that happened for a little bit. I get to the next open house, but it's too soon. So I see it, for sale signs up. I drive on past, I go get myself something to eat and was kind of waiting it out. And kind of let go of those thoughts. Like they were still lingering. I didn't do any active work to remove that energy, but like moved on from that. Come back when it's time for the third open house. No open house. I was like, what is happening? So at that point, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And I pull off and I pull into a church parking lot, and I'm like, oh man, like, what have I done? What did I do? And I'm questioning what I did to cause myself to now not have these homes as possibilities anymore. Was I being punished? I felt like they were being taken away from me by God, one by one by one. I was like, I don't understand what I did. Like, what's going on? How did I get here? And then I stopped. And this is where my last video on stillness comes into play. This is what Jesus came to teach about going within. The kingdom of heaven is within. When you turn within and tune out this conscious mind, that's when we have a direct and powerful connection to God. And that's when we begin to live. Okay. And so I stopped and I said, what is it that I'm believing right now? And is it, or what is it that I believe right now? And does it align with what I'm telling myself right now? And I took some deep breaths, and I went in and I said, I believe that I'm worthy. I believe I'm loved. I don't believe I'm punished for choices that I make. That choices that I make are just about experiences in this life that help me grow and expand, whether I make the best choice or maybe what would be perceived as not the best choice. I also believe that this experience that I'm perceiving as negative because I'm placing a judgment on the experience, and it does not need to be judged. It just is. It just happened. And it happened at the hand of the divine, because I also believe that God, the universe, your higher self, whatever, they're conspiring in your favor, in my favor, all the time, 100% of the time, they're conspiring in my favor. So if in fact the door is closed on these first 3 open houses, I think it's because I don't deserve it now. I've done it, or I initially was thinking that, right? Like, what have I done that these are being taken away from me? But perhaps they're being taken away from me so that I'm not tempted because there's something even better in my belief system. Now that I know that, and I have witnessed and experienced that God really is always working in my favor, now I actually know I can lean into that and trust. And with that, the overwhelming peace that passes understanding takes over me. The gratitude takes over, that says, thank you for whatever reason. I don't have to know. Thank you for whatever reason you have removed these from my pool of options. Thank you. And I just felt so at peace. And I realized in that moment how yucky I felt before. And I thought, gosh, I used to live like this. And I used to actually be happy in that. And I don't know how, but it was literally hell. And it was. And that's what Jesus is talking about. We often come and live this life in a place of complete death. We live in hell. We get so drawn in and sucked into the narrative of surviving here in this world, and lose sight of the truth of who we are and why we're here, that we cannot find abundant life. And that, oh, spirits all up in my face right now. Sorry. So that's the message, apparently. And in fact, they touched my nose. So spot on. That's so funny. We lose sight of why we're here and who we are. So I'm going to repeat it because spirit, happy repeat it. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I recorded this video earlier and, I got all the way done. I was so excited. I drew a biblical tarot card because a lot, everything I was talking about was scripturally related. And I got all excited because I pulled Paul. I pulled a card of Paul, and everything I had talked about was coming out of Paul, either Jesus's own words or coming out of texts that Paul had written out of Romans and Galatians. And I was so excited. I'm like, oh, Spirit's all up in this. And then the recording didn't save. I got an error message that said I ran out of space on my computer. It's like, oh no. So here I am recording again. But you know what I didn't get last time? I didn't get the spot on. At first I was angry about it. And then I said, Jennifer, don't pass judgment. There's a reason this didn't save. Okay, card just fell out. There's a reason this didn't save. And the reason I don't need to know why. I didn't, maybe I forgot to say something. What I can tell you I didn't say that I just got the spot on was we forget who we are and our divinity and why we're here. And what do we pull? The star of Bethlehem, pointing to perfect north, pointing to perfect enlightenment, pointing to perfect love. That's the arc of this narrative. The arc, the getting from the law to the enlightenment, we do that through love. We do that through removing judgment from our lives that leaves us in death. And when we remove that, it brings us to life. Scripture tells us, gosh, where is it at in scripture? It's in Romans, tells us that what the law was powerless to do, and I'm going to summarize it in these words like this. It's not exactly how it's written. What the law was powerless to do, love conquered. What the law was powerless to do, love conquered. What it really says is Jesus came and Jesus became the sacrifice, became the living sacrifice to conquer that law. And that is true. But Jesus is love in human form. Jesus is Christ consciousness in human form. And again, I come back to Jesus didn't come to this life just to teach us about didn't come to this life to teach us to bow down and worship him. He didn't come to this life to be put up on a pedestal. He came to this life as a sacrifice because he didn't have to come. He did not have to come. He's already achieved Christ consciousness. His soul has already achieved Christ consciousness. He chose, though, to still come and do this journey as Jesus to show us the way, because the way we're going, when we get stuck in this narrative, when we get stuck in judgment, that way is powerless, powerless. The power is in opening up to divine truth, unfiltered truth through our connection with spirit. Follow the North Star. Open up the text. Read Jesus's word. Read Galatians. A lot of what I just said comes straight from did I say Galatians? From Romans. There's some in Galatians too, but Romans talks about going from a slave to a child. Romans talks about going from Romans at some point in there says, who condemns us? That's in the part that talks about Israel. Who condemns us? No one. No one condemns us. We condemn ourselves. That's the death. That's the crucifixion that Jesus mimicked on the cross. He said, quit crucifying yourself. Quit doing that. You are forgiven. You are forgiven. Okay, I'm going to leave it right there. Should we draw one more card? So we got this. I mean, I feel like the star really sums it up. So I don't put, oh, one did look. It flipped. It flipped right there. Oh, it looks like two flipped. Two flipped, and oh my gosh. Okay, here's the two that flipped. The first one is judgment. And you know what it says? Last judgment. Be done. Release that weight. Be done with the judgment. Judgment matters, but it's not in the way that we define it, not in the moral judgment. It's not about moral judgment. And I have that on this list. I'm going to publish this list. It is not about moral righteousness. That's the problem, is we get stuck in this idea that we are here to figure out how to be morally perfect, morally righteous. Righteousness is not about perfection. Righteousness is about being right in relationship with God, ourselves, and each other. That is righteousness. Okay. And when we move from the law to enlightenment, what moves is our idea of moral righteousness becomes authenticity, becomes integrity, it becomes about being who we truly are at the divine level. And with that enlightenment comes the realization that everyone else is also divine, and the love for them. Okay. And then the last here is Queen of Candles. And I'm sorry, I forget what candles are. Oh, okay. So candles are ambition, growth, ideas, energy. And who do we have here? Deborah, prophetess and leader. She was a prophet and a judge. I don't know if you know that. Only person in scripture that's both a prophet and a judge, and is a woman. So talk about divine breaking the rules, Jesus. Well, this was before Jesus. She was before Jesus's time, but God breaking the rules of the land about the positions that women are allowed to be in. Yeah. Anyway, it says now Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Israel at the time. And this comes out of the book of Judges. So she's a prophetess and a leader, and she's leading Israel. And Queen of Candles, again, sorry, I get candles confused with some of the other ones. Okay, so again, this is a woman in a patriarchal society that became a queen. Okay, she knew who she was. You need to remember who you are by removing the judgment and by following that North Star. I don't know how long this message is. I hope it's not forever long, but it was an important one, I know. So I just want to thank you for sharing it with me. I'm going to draft this up in some way and publish it. It might not be out there right away, but I'll get it out there. Love you all. Thank you so much. Peace out.